I almost didn't pick it up. I almost just walked past it like everyone else did. She said that later, when someone asked her how it all began. And the honest answer was this. She had been so tired that afternoon that bending down felt like a decision, not a reflex. But something made her stop. Maybe it was the way the card sat face up in the middle of the sidewalk, clean despite the wind, like it had been placed rather than dropped. Maybe it was just the particular exhaustion of a person who has spent years being careful about small things, because small things were all she had. Her name was Marlo Vess, 25 years old. She carried a canvas tote over one shoulder. Inside it, a sketchbook with bent corners, 3 half-used charcoal sticks, and a granola bar she'd been saving since morning. She worked the breakfast shift at a diner 6 days a week, and on her one day off she walked to the city park and drew whatever was there. Pigeons, strangers, the particular sadness of an empty bench. She picked up the card. Stellan Hargrove, Chief Executive Officer, Hargrove Creative Holdings. The edges were slightly worn as if it had lived a long time in a jacket pocket. She turned it over. Nothing on the back. A phone number on the front, small and clean. She stood on that sidewalk for a full minute thinking about whether to call. Then she thought, someone might need this. And Marlo Vess, who had been not needed by enough people in her life to know how that felt, made the call. It rang 3 times. Stellan Hargrove, the voice was direct, unhurried, not unkind. Hi, I'm sorry to bother you, Marlo said, already feeling self-conscious. I found your card on the ground near 5th and Caldwell. I wanted to return it, or let you know, a pause. Then, you called a stranger's number to tell them you found their business card. I thought you might need it. Another pause. Longer this time. Most people would have just left it. I know, she said simply. And that was all. Stellan Hargrove, 33, had built his company from a single design consultancy into a mid-sized creative agency with 40 employees and offices on 2 floors of a glass building downtown. He was not the kind of man who made decisions lightly. He had a reputation for being precise, deliberate, and occasionally difficult to read. But in his car, parked outside a client building, holding his phone after that call ended, he sat for a moment longer than he needed to. He called her back 20 minutes later. I'd like to know your name, he said. Properly, Marlo. Marlo. I run a creative company. We've been looking for someone to handle social illustration work. Nothing glamorous, mostly digital spot art for campaigns. Do you draw? She almost laughed. Every day of my life. Could you send me something? She looked down at her tote bag, at the corner of the sketchbook sticking out. I can, but why? You don't know anything about me. I know you picked up a card off the ground and called a stranger just to do the right thing, Stellan said. In my experience, that's not nothing. She sent him 3 photos that evening, taken on her phone, slightly overexposed, of sketches from the park. A woman sleeping on a bench with a paper bag clutched to her chest. 2 kids arguing over a bike, both of them grinning anyway. An old man feeding pigeons, looking at them the way you look at the only company you've got. Stellan forwarded them to his creative director, Petra Wyndham, without context or comment. Just the images. Petra called him within the hour. Where did you find this person? On the sidewalk, he said. Which was technically true. Marlo came in the following Tuesday. She wore her good jacket, the one without the frayed cuff, and arrived 12 minutes early, and waited on the bench in the lobby trying to look like she belonged there. Which she did not yet feel she did. What she didn't know, what she would only learn weeks later, was that Hargrove Creative was in a quieter kind of crisis than it appeared. A major client had pulled a campaign contract 2 months prior, citing creative stagnation. 3 senior illustrators had left in the aftermath. The company's visual identity work had become, in Petra's honest private assessment, technically correct and emotionally empty. They didn't need someone with a polished portfolio. They needed someone who still felt things when they drew. Petra saw Marlo's sketches and understood immediately. This is what we've been missing. The interview lasted 2 hours. Petra asked most of the questions. Stellan sat to the side and said almost nothing, which Marlo found either reassuring or alarming. She couldn't decide which. Near the end, Petra slid the photo of the old man feeding pigeons across the table. "Tell me about this one." Marlo looked at it. "I saw him every Tuesday for a month. He always came alone. He'd bring a whole bag of seed and take his time, like it was the most important meeting of his week. I don't know his story, but I drew him because—" She paused. "Because I think everyone deserves to be seen, even when they think no one's looking." The room was quiet for a moment. Then Petra said, "When can you start?" She started that Friday. Part-time at first. Marlo kept the diner shifts because she was practical in the way that people are when they've had to be, and a trial period was still a trial period. She worked at a corner desk near the window, headphones in, sketchbook beside the tablet, and produced work that made the creative team stop and look on, their way past. The client whose campaign had replaced a generic stock illustration, packaged with 3 of Marlo's spot illustrations, saw engagement on their materials rise within 6 weeks. It was quiet proof, the kind that doesn't announce itself. What Stellan had not told anyone, not Petra, not the team, was that he had found out 3 months prior that his company's biggest remaining client was preparing to move to a competitor. He had said nothing publicly, but had been quietly rebuilding the creative foundation, hoping to show results before the contract renewal meeting. Marlo's work was not the only thing he was counting on, but it was, in ways he hadn't entirely expected, the piece that felt most alive. At the renewal meeting, the client's creative lead pointed specifically to the spot illustration series. "This," she said, "feels like it was made by someone who actually cares." The contract renewed. Fully. Stellan told Marlo 2 weeks after. Not in a meeting. In the hallway, coffee in hand, almost in passing. "The renewal went through," he said. "A lot of it was your work." Marlo looked at him. "You never told me there was pressure." "I didn't want it to change how you drew." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "That was either very considerate or very strategic." "Probably both," he said honestly. "But I meant it as the first one." She nodded slowly. Then, "The card. You lost it on purpose, didn't you?" He looked at her steadily. "I drop one every few months. In different neighborhoods. You're the first person in 2 years who called." She didn't say anything right away. She just looked at him the way she looked at things she was deciding whether to draw. Carefully, quietly, like she was finding the line beneath the surface. "Why?" she finally asked. "Because I think honesty deserves to be rewarded," he said, "and I wanted to know if it still existed." Months later, Marlo was still at the corner desk by the window. Full-time now. Her sketchbook sat beside the tablet, always open. She still walked to the park on days off. She still drew what was there. One afternoon, she found a new business card on her own desk. Her name on it, clean and simple. Marlo Vess, lead visual artist. Hargrove Creative Holdings. She picked it up. Turned it over. On the back, in small handwriting, "You almost walked past it." "Glad you didn't." She smiled. Slowly, the way you smile when something has traveled a long distance to reach you. She thought about the sidewalk, the wind, the card lying face up like it had been waiting, the granola bar she'd eaten afterward, sitting on a park bench, feeling like maybe the day hadn't been so ordinary after all. She had bent down when she didn't have to, and that single act of quiet decency had been the beginning of everything. The most important doors in life are rarely the ones you knock on. Sometimes they open because you stopped to do a small, honest thing when no one was watching, because kindness, offered freely and without expectation, has a way of finding its way back to you. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.